Hello, viewers. Welcome. Once again, this is DRM Disease Reversal Mitigation Studio, and my name is Fred Mushiri, a health practitioner based in Kenya. We are about to embark on part 2 of gastritis. Once again, if you have any question, comment, or proposal, let me know on the comments section. And if you have any personal consultation to do, you may call me on the number provided on your screen and I'll be willing to answer to you. Otherwise, continue liking, sharing, subscribing in order to enhance visibility of these presentations once they are uploaded on this YouTube channel. Thanks a lot. Good evening and welcome. Now, our topic is gastritis part 2. Remember, we had a session a few days ago where we discussed the causes of gastritis. And now in this section, we'll be looking at the true remedies for gastritis. And I would like us to remember some of the things we talked about last few days. We said that the digestive system is the most guarded system in the body with up to 90% of the immune defenses. And they should not be the system being invaded by diseases such as gastritis. Now, in order to get us off, we are going to have some texts from the Bible to lead us on the way, because God is our creator. He bears the manual or the functioning of our nature, and therefore we get a lot of information concerning how to treat our body from the Bible and from nature. Now, reading from the book of Matthew, chapter 7 and verse 15 and verse 19, we get the following from the creator of life and the manager of the digestive system. Jesus says, talking to the disciples, that there is nothing from without a man, that entering into him can defile him, but the things which come out of him, those that defile man, those are they that defile man. When you proceed to verse 19, it says, because it entereth not into his heart, but into his belly, and then goes out into the draught. Now, a very important message from the creator of the digestive system. Now, here we infer that the digestive system, it's an open system, because anything that enters into it is not part of the body unless it is assimilated, digested, and introduced into the circulatory system. And so he says that it gets into the belly. What is digested, and what is able to be absorbed and assimilated into the body is taken in, but the rest goes out of the belly into the draught. Now, the digestive system is an extension of the integumentary system, the skin system. So we say the digestive system is an extension of the skin. In fact, it is the skin turned outside inward. It is open because all the way from the mouth to the anus, it's an open system. Things can just go in and get out unless we have a good digestive system. So Jesus wanted to imply by telling the disciples, once or after they had been accused of eating food without washing hands, and the Pharisees saw this to be a disgusting public health signal that was being given by a teacher like Jesus Christ to the rest of the people who are there, that it meant they were making themselves unclean by eating with unclean hands. And Jesus could have, or understands the mechanism of the working of the digestive system, and therefore he could have ignored the washing of hands because he knew there was no risk with eating with dirty hands. And he could have been thinking of fluids like the acid, the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, which destroys pathogens. Or he could have understood the gravity of the unwashed hands. So he did not see any risk of eating the food without hands washed. But something else we need to note is that we have very strong digestive juices in the digestive system that helps to destroy pathogens and other toxins that might get into the digestive system. Remember, it is always extremely difficult to ensure that anything we eat is clean and sterile. In fact, even when you think you have washed your hands or you have washed the utensils that you're using for eating, we have particles that may not be visualized with your eyes that are lying in the droplets of water on your plate or on your spoon that will get you into the digestive system. And unless we had a very good defense mechanism in the digestive system, these pathogens could have entered in the body. But the digestive system is an open system. It's heavily guarded, and therefore it is almost unlikely that unless whatever you have taken in is obvious poison, nothing of the microorganisms should pose danger if you have a strong stomach acid. And I think Jesus was aware of this because he was the creator and he still is the creator and the regenerator of the digestive system. There's something else to remember, that we are admonished by the spirit of prophecy in the book HR, the article of September 1, 1866, and we will be reading from paragraph 3, which says, children also are fed too frequently, and this produces fever and suffering in various ways. The stomach should not be kept constantly at work. It should have its periods of rest. Without it, children will be peevish and irritable and frequently sick. The parents do not trace the existing effect to the true cause, that is, a transgression on their part, but they rush to the doctors expecting that the doctor will set things right. Very important aspects here to note, that children as well as adults, if they eat frequently, you'll be overtaxing the digestive system, the stomach. It will not have periods of rest. And one of the factors that are contributing to inflammation of the gut and even cancer is because of continuous working of organs without rest. This causes inflammation outrightly. So meaning we need to have times of rest, because the digestive system, as opposed to other systems, also regulate the brain in terms of the neurotransmitters generated in the gut have an effect on the mood and our state of mind, because there is a gut-brain connection through the nerves in the gut and through the neurotransmitters that have an effect on the nervous system. Therefore, we are supposed to have times of rest so as we can regularize the way those neurotransmitters are generated in the stomach. Overtaxing the system also compromises our mood, because we are also overtaxing the cells that generate those neurotransmitters. And remember, up to 90% of serotonin, which is essential for mood regulation and boosting our joy, it is generated in the digestive system, more than up to 90%. This means a depressed digestive system will lead to a depressed mind, and this will be a cause of depression. So children and adults as well To avoid becoming irritable and depressed and peevish, we are supposed to regulate the periods we are supposed to eat and the amount of food we are supposed to eat to ensure that we do not overtax the system. Now, something else is that the mother abuses the laws which govern the child's life and then commits another transgression by interfering with the nature by introducing poisonous drugs into the system. Now, you allowing your child to eat a lot, and when the system becomes inflamed and exhausted, we think the child is sick and we take them to hospital where other drugs are introduced that continue to disturb the system. We could have understood the laws of nature, regulated the periods of eating and how much they should be eating at any meal, and preventing the kids from snacking all the time so that we do not burden the system. But you see now, instead of identifying the problem, we think the child is sick because of some other cause. And so we take the children to hospital for investigations, and later they are given drugs which do not match the sickness or the exhaustion that they have. So many die prematurely. This is what we are told. And others live to have to be lifelong sufferers, a burden to themselves and to the society. And who is to blame for this weight of evil? The author says that our kind Lord cannot be blamed, for he does not take pleasure in seeing these young ones suffer. So the parents are to blame for the ailments these children contract because of the burden they have on their system coming from continuous eating without having rest of their digestive system. So this is very important. Now that we are discussing the true remedies of gastritis, will be one of the factors leading to gastritis is actually overtaxing or gut fatigue, eating a lot that is becoming a burden to the system and eventually leading to ailments. Last time we discussed the etiology of gastritis, and we mentioned a number of factors, including drugs that individuals are taking. And we noted that some of the drugs that contribute to gastritis are antibiotics because they disrupt the microbiome of the digestive system. And we also have antacids. They cause gastritis. And this information, we got it from the horse's mouth, the mainstream science. So you can Google it. You're going to find exactly what we are saying here. So any drug can cause gastritis, including those drugs we keep at home. It is common in Kenya among many parents to keep a sort of a chemist or a pharmacy at home. So they have Piriton, they have paracetamol, they have diclofenac, they have a number of drugs, antacids they keep at home so that in the eventuality their child or themselves get sick, they will just pull it off and have it administered to the kid or to themselves. And they consider this to be wisdom, but it is not, because we have natural ways that do not have side effects that we can use to prevent such conditions as gastritis. And one of them is to avoid this over medication. Okay, we're not supposed to keep drugs at home. We also mentioned we have to take water timely in the right times and then take it adequately. Water can cause gastritis if it is taken together with meals. Therefore, we have to set times for taking water. And I said 1 hour before you have your main meal. And if you have had your main meal, then you have to take it 3 hours after. Water should not be mixed with foods. Neither should we put soups or fluids in water. Food should be eaten and digested by saliva, not water. Why some people have the interest or get the interest to look for water when after they have eaten or when they are eating is because they are dehydrated. Had they taken water 1 hour before, they could have had enough saliva to digest the food during the time of the meals, and they could not have taxed the system by diluting very important digestive enzymes, which only work at certain pHs and at certain temperatures and at certain concentrations. So we should never disrupt the work of digestion by taking water when we have just had our meals or in the process of taking our meals. I also mentioned about low stomach acid, and I said it's a major cause of gastritis. And we'll be looking at the functions of the stomach acid today in order for you to know the importance of this acid. So you should never think that the stomach acid is for harm. It means good for you. Then we mentioned the loss of microbiome, and today we shall also be mentioning the importance of microbiome in the body, and without it, you not have a healthy gut. Then there's a factor we do not discuss about the fungal overgrowth, especially with the elimination of the gut microbiome. What takes over is fungus, and we'll see some of the dangerous effects of fungus. Then the issue to do with chronic stress, we have to avoid stress if we have to heal from gastritis, because chronic stress is a trigger for production of cortisol, and cortisol stimulates the vagus nerve in the stomach, which subsequently causes gastritis. So the issues of gut fatigue as a result of overfeeding, inflammatory food, not being able to chew properly, and irregular feeding programs, and also deficiencies. These are things we are going to look at and see how we can adjust them to be able to reverse gastritis. Now, in order to go to the true remedy of gastritis, here is a question that always haunts us. Why is it that the treatment of gastritis, the recurrence rates are so high? After people have been treated for gastritis and Helicobacter pylori, they come back with the same symptoms all the time. This could suggest that we do not get the right target, or the remedy that was used was not the true remedy, or whoever administered was not the drugs was not the right person, or he did not understand the disease from cause to effect. That is why today we are looking at the true remedy for gastritis. Okay, so you could be conversant with the H. pylori kit. Last time I talked of 3 drugs that are contained in this kit: 2 antibiotics and 1 proton pump inhibitor, which is actually an antacid. And we said that we have never, those who have ever been treated on this kit always come with recurrence and relapses. So we've not found the true remedy in use of the H. pylori kit, because people are tested later and then they are found to have to be still positive for H. pylori. The other thing we noted last time is even after an H. pylori test, because many people test positive for H. pylori, but they do not have symptoms. And if they do not have symptoms, some of them may cease to be treated. The fact that we have this bacteria in the system and it has formed a symbiosis with the human digestive system may mean that when others are tested, they may return positive results, not because they have the symptoms, but because the bacteria is resident in the digestive system and has formed a symbiosis with the human digestive system. And this is the information we got from the mainstream science. So meaning, the real target may not be H. pylori. Today, we'll be looking at the true target of gastritis. And allow me to talk briefly about the gut microbiome, because this is a very important system, a forgotten organ in the human body. We have trillions and trillions of bacteria in the human body, and most of them are concentrated in the gut. This colonization started at birth, when children are born, when babies are born vaginally. They get the first administration of the microbiome in the mother's birth canal, and then they ingest it, and it starts to colonize the digestive system, because when the baby is born, they do not have stomach acid. So there is no risk of killing the gut microbiome when it is ingested by the baby. So it has time to proliferate in the digestive system, and it starts to educate the immune system. So since then, you have had your gut microbiome. We also have the microbiome in the skin. We have the microbiome in the respiratory system. But the gut contains the largest population of microbiome. And this is important in maintaining the gut integrity. We'll be looking at some of the functions of the gut microbiome. It helps us to digest dietary carbohydrates, for example, fiber and resistant starches. And these are the materials it uses to generate or to form short-chain fatty acids like butyrate and propionate acetate. Now, these short-chain fatty acids, they are a major energy source for the colon cells. They ensure that the cells of the intestines are healthy, they are kept healthy, and the barrier between the circulatory system and the cells of the intestines is kept healthy and intact, so that no pathogens or undigested food particles can leak into the bloodstream. Now, this is how they prevent inflammation. We also know that some of these short-chain fatty acids, such as butyrate, are very good for controlling blood sugar and also for controlling inflammation in the colon. This is how they prevent colon cancer. Now, this is important. Had we not the gut microbiome, we could be prone to cancer, diabetes, and other inflammatory conditions that most likely affect the digestive system. So the other importance of the microbiome is vitamin synthesis. And one of the vitamins synthesized by the gut microbiome is vitamin K. I'll give you an example. When a baby is born, they do not have a rich microbiome. In the Jewish system, after a baby had been born, they would be circumcised in the 8th day for a reason. Because the microbiome, once the baby is born, has time to proliferate, and it has about 7 days to proliferate and synthesize vitamin K, which is very important for blood clotting. So that when they are circumcised on the 8th day, the baby has developed ability to clot the blood. This would not happen if they did not have vitamin K from synthesis by the microbiome. We know the microbiome is also important for synthesis of B12. I talked about synthesis. The first process of synthesis of B12 starts in the mouth by the mouth microbiome and proceeds all the way to the esophagus. Now, in the stomach, because of the acid, we have binding of B12 with an intrinsic factor, and the process of synthesis is continued downwards in the small intestine. But for people who have an acid reflux, this means they have shots of gastric contents now and again into the esophagus and into the mouth. They disrupt the esophageal and the oral microbiome, which may also disrupt the synthesis of B12. So it's good to have the microbiome with us because we'll benefit from synthesis of vitamins such as vitamin K, B12, biotin, which is vitamin B17, and also vitamin B9, which is also called folate. So the gut microbiome is important, very important indeed. We also need the gut microbiome because it assists in bile acid metabolism. It is a mechanism through which the bile, once it has been released into the duodenum in the small intestine, it's broken down by microbiome and it is recycled back into the liver. Therefore, we can have a lot of it without losing it for fat digestion and also for cholesterol management. So the microbiome is that important. And by so doing, it will also maintain the health of the intestinal cells and also the stomach. Regulation of the environment in the stomach is dependent partly on the gut microbiome. Other importance of the gut microbiome is the priming of the immune system. And the immune system is important because it helps us to survive. And we cannot survive without a healthy gut microbiome because it contributes up to 90% of the body's immune system. We know that the presence of the microbiome in the gut occupies space, thus ensuring it competes for nutrients and inhibits growth of fungus. These bacteria also produce antimicrobial compounds that inhibit growth of any other pathogenic microorganisms, including the fungi. We also need the gut microbiome for maintenance of a healthy barrier. In the intestine, I discussed this to ensure that the mucus layer and the tight junctions in the intestinal lining are kept intact. Then we have to have a very good, rich microbiome so that we don't have pathogens escaping into the bloodstream. Now, another important role of the gut microbiome is the energy harvesting. They influence how many calories of the food that we have taken is supposed to be extracted from the food, and therefore ensuring that we have a good balance between body weight and fat storage. So the gut microbiome is important for weight regulation. So meaning we have some people who are obese simply because they do not have a healthy gut microbiome, or they have what we call an imbalance. The scientific word for gut microbiome imbalance is dysbiosis. The gut microbiome is also important for metabolism of drugs, but we know if we are used to taking drugs, some of the metabolized from those drugs can be toxic to your gut microbiome and they can cause destruction of your microbiome. Then let's also remember that we need a healthy microbiome for the regulation of the hormones that are produced in your gut. And he said some of the hormones and neurotransmitters are responsible for a good mood. So they will also enable you to have good appetite. They also notify you when you have eaten food to satisfaction. So their role is enhanced by the gut microbiome. So the mood, your anxiety, your appetite, your satiety, and even blood sugar levels are controlled by the gut microbiome. So this is how important this section or this part of the body, this forgotten system is. to your body. Very important. Now, let's remember something else. That most of the people have inflammatory intestines and digestive system because of the damage done by Candida, which comes as a result of we have lost the gut microbiome, and this gives way to Candida and other fungi to grow into your digestive system. And once we have a fungal overgrowth, then this can ruin your gut and your mind. We have always talked of spontaneous, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And we have forgotten that we also have small intestine fungal overgrowth, which is actually having very excessive numbers of fungus in the intestines because we have eliminated the normal gut flora, either because of the drugs we are using or other lifestyle habits, such as not providing fiber or eating over processed foods. We do not provide enough fiber to the gut microbiome, or we are eating long shelf life foods or food items. Because long shelf life food items contain preservatives, which include antibiotics, which destroy the gut microbiome. Once the gut microbiome is destroyed, this gives way to fungal overgrowth. And after fungal overgrowth, we'll have all sorts of inflammations leading to ulcers and even cancer. Because fungus will cause chronic inflammatory conditions. And these include peptic ulcer disease, they include inflammatory bowel disease, ulcers. Eventually it will cause cancer. And it will present with the same symptoms as most people present with when they're having gastritis, such as bloating, abdominal pain, nausea, and even diarrhea. So we are told from mainstream science that small intestine fungal overgrowth occurs in both immunocompromised, meaning people who have low immune system. This could be people who are on chemotherapy or anti-cancer drugs, those who are using immunosuppressants, such as people who have received organ transplants and they have to be put on immunosuppressants, drugs that lower the immune system, so as they're able to accommodate the donor's organ. Or individuals who are using antacids, for example, the proton pump inhibitors, because those ones also cause fungal overgrowth. And this is what we learned last time. Then people who are diabetic, because having a lot of sugar floating in the bloodstream also causes inflammation and lowers your immune system. And also people who are using antibiotics, because antibiotics also will kick out the healthy gut microbiome and it will give way to fungus. Remember, fungus is resistant to treatment. That is why it causes chronic inflammation and it needs to be treated for a long time to be overcome. And some of the fungal infections and conditions do not have treatment. This may mean if somebody gets gastric cancer because of fungal overgrowth or invasion, they are most likely not to have true treatment. That is why we need to consider very important remedies here that are going to prevent the disease gastritis and subsequently prevent other complications that come as a result of inflammation. Now, as we move on, I want us to consider what we call the food transit time. The food transit time. And if you look at the digestive system, different sections of the digestive system have different contact time with food. We have areas where the food slows down, and we have areas where food is moving fast. For example, the contact time between food and the esophagus is the shortest. But when food reaches the stomach, you can see the stomach area where we have the yellow coloring on your screen. What you can see on your screen, the first part is the esophagus, and the dilated part from the esophagus is called the stomach. Now that area, the contact time between food and the stomach is about 4 hours, because food has to be allowed for digestion. And then after the 4 hours, the food will get into the small intestine, and the contact time between food and the small intestine is shorter compared to when the food enters the large intestine, and the contact time is longer. Therefore, from the time the food gets into the mouth to the time food is expelled in the anus, the normal transit time is supposed to be 12 to 16 hours. This means after eating a meal which is bulky, anybody who is healthy is supposed to have a bowel movement after 12 to 16 hours. So this would mean that if you have taken 2 meals in a day, you ought to have 2 bowel movements, okay? Half. That is one that occurs in the 12th hour and another one that occurs after the end of the day. But this is not the case with so many people. We have food taking a lot of time. If you extend the transit time of food, this means you are actually inflaming any part of the digestive system where the food is taking longer time. For example, in the stomach, we know there are some conditions that may cause food to linger more than 4 hours in the stomach. For example, if you took your food with water, or you have the wrong combination of food. Maybe you eat carbohydrates together with proteins, such as you eat ugali with milk or ugali with meat. Now that one will prolong the contact time. And because food has to be broken down in the mouth, and by the time food is getting to the stomach, it is dead. In fact, we cannot assimilate the food until it is dead, broken down to the extent all the particles are free from one another, and it is easily absorbed into the bloodstream. So that condition is called dead food. Now, what happens in the stomach? We have a lot of acid, because if we do not have the acid, a dead food will attract fungus. Okay? Fungus has high affinity for dead food. And for that reason, God designed that we're supposed to have a lot of acid. Now, for those who do not have a lot of acid, either because they are taking a lot of antacids, okay, or maybe they are diluting their food, or maybe they are feeding most of the time by snacking or eating a lot of food, this would mean they have low stomach acid. And if you have low stomach acid, you attract fungus in the stomach. And fungus will cause gastritis. And this is because the contact time in the stomach is prolonged. Now, have you ever asked yourself why? Where the food stays longer along the alimentary canal, this is where we have most problems. It is unlikely that you're going to have inflammatory and chronic inflammatory and cancerous conditions in the small intestine. It's always unlikely. But you have problems in the stomach, and you will have problems in the large intestine. And this has to do with the contact time. The longer the contact time because food, after having been broken down, is dead. It attracts fungus, and fungus will cause inflammation, and that is why we need to speed the transit time. So the best way we can ensure that is to make sure that we follow the rules that I'm going to stipulate in the next slides. What I needed you to understand is that the transit time we also determine whose gut will be inflamed and whose gut will not. And please take note of the fact that the more bowel movements we have as regularly as we eat, the better the health of your digestive system. So if you have 2 meals, you need to have 2 bowel movements in a day. Now, let's also note that the gut microbiome is very important for a healthy brain. The gut microbiome is also important for a healthy brain. There is what we call a gut-brain axis, which promotes what we call the neurological functions, because most of the transmitters, for example, serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, 95% of these neurotransmitters are produced in the gut. They are synthesized in the gut, and they'll have an impact on your brain. It will control your mood. It will control your behavior. Okay, so behavior and mood regulation depends on a very healthy communication between the gut and your brain in what we call the gut-brain axis. So the gut influences the brain chemistry by affecting your mood and also your anxiety. So the more healthy, the more diverse, the more stable microbiota we are going to have, the more healthy our brain will be. If we have imbalance of what we call dysbiosis, then we are going to suffer all sorts of conditions, including neurodegenerative conditions. In the gut, we are going to have inflammatory bowel disease. We're also going to have gastritis. We're also going to have cancer. One of the other things that is going to cause dysbiosis or imbalance is what we call chronic stress. And chronic stress generates cortisol, which causes inflammation in the gut. And that is why people who have had trauma to the head, especially when they were involved in a road accident, when they go to the hospital, they have to be given a prophylaxis or something to prevent them developing a gastric ulcer because of the trauma. That is because of cortisol that is produced once we have a trauma to the head. So the trauma can also be chemical because stress will generate will generate a lot of cortisol, which causes a gut inflammation. So how important have we seen the gut microbiome is to the body? The presence of the gut microbiome, which is a very healthy and rich system which generates the stomach lining. The absence of it, by default, will attract the presence of the fungus, and fungus will destroy your gut. Now, while fungal colonization of the stomach acts as a primary cause of severe, sometimes fatal gastric damage and perforation, something that people have ignored. The gut is going to cause perforation, especially Candida albicans, which is most frequently identified as a gastric challenge. Okay, but we also have other fungi such as zygomycosis, which cause tissue necrosis. So fungus has been established to cause destruction of the gut. Now, we also have something else we call fungus gastritis. This primarily observed in individuals with a compromised immune system, especially people who have diabetes, particularly diabetic ketoacidosis, people who have blood malignancies and cancer. They have been seen to have fungus, gastritis as a result of fungus. Because of use of these drugs such as steroids, uh, chemotherapeutics, and antibiotics, they will suppress the gut microbiome, and eventually this will lead to fungal overgrowth. So when fungi invade the stomach lining, it will lead to severe inflammation and also necrosis, and sometimes gastric perforation, and even gastric cancer. That is how dangerous the fungus is. So gastric cancer has also been attributed to fungus, and this is not uncommon. It has been seen in medical journals, research in medical journals, that gastric cancer has been associated with fungal overgrowth, because fungus causes erosion of the stomach, chronic inflammation, and eventually leads to gastric cancer. Now, before we discuss some of the true remedies, I wanted us to consider or look at the importance of the stomach acid and its role in health. Last time I mentioned about the recommended pH levels in the stomach, and the stomach acid has a concentration of between 1.5 to 3.5. These are the ratios recommended for a healthy gut. If you have this concentration of the acid, you'll be able to digest proteins. You'll be able to digest proteins, and you'll not have problem with healing, because we need these proteins for healing and also repair. We also need these concentrations because of activation of enzymes such as pepsinogen into pepsin, which is important for digestion of proteins. The gastric acid at high concentrations is also good as an immune defense mechanism, because the high acidity kills pathogenic microorganisms which are ingested together with food, because we cannot ensure 100% sterility of the food materials we are taking in. We will always have some pathogens or toxins slip into the digestive system, and with the presence of a very concentrated acid, it kills those pathogenic microorganisms. The stomach acid is also important for nutrient absorption, because for us to absorb very important minerals such as iron, calcium, and vitamin, we need the right concentrations of the acid. The stomach acid is also important for food breakdown. It breaks down complex food compounds and also acts as a signal for the small intestine, the area we call the duodenum, to start secreting digestive juices such as pancreatic enzymes and also bile. The right concentration of the stomach acid, uniformly mixed food in the stomach, we call it chyme. The food has to be uniformly mixed to be able to signal the production of bile and pancreatic enzymes in the duodenum. If you don't have the right concentration of chyme in the stomach, then the signals are so poor, we may not have the pancreatic enzymes and the bile being secreted at the right time. This is how important having the right concentrations of the stomach acid is. We also know that when we have the right concentrations of the acid, it helps the sphincters above the stomach and below the stomach to be closed all the time. Otherwise, if you have low stomach acid, this will compromise the chemical signal that ensures the sphincters are closed. And you're going to have your sphincters, especially the one above the stomach, open. And if it opens, you're going to have a gastric reflux or a heartburn that will cause destruction of the esophagus, and sometimes it leads to cancer because of chronic inflammation by the acid. So we have esophageal cancer as a result of a sphincter above the stomach that is opening, spilling gastric contents out and inflaming the esophagus. And then we need the right concentration of the acid so that we can inhibit fungal growth. And I said there's a longer contact time in the stomach of up to 4 hours. And because the stomach is interacting with food that is dead, I said that dead food has high affinity for fungus. And therefore, were it not for the high concentration of stomach acid, we could have a fungal overgrowth. But good concentrations will inhibit that fungal overgrowth. Now, to end, let's discuss the true remedies of gastritis. And this one will provide a permanent solution to your problem. If you carry out or if you implement these two remedies and you do not find a solution to your gastritis, let me know. You have my number on the screen. Number one rule in order to get rid of gastritis is you have to ensure that your stomach has rest. This means what? That we need breaks between a meal and the other. For example, if you eat the most important meal of the day, which is the breakfast, you need to give your stomach about 7 hours before you take another meal. So this will allow time for your stomach to digest, and also it will give time for your stomach to regather energy to be able to digest the next meal that is coming. So avoid snacking between the meals. Something else is that it is important and it's more healthy to have 2 meals in a day than 3. So you can have 2 meals, one in the morning and another one in the afternoon, late in the afternoon, maybe at around 3, and then you stop your meals. So this will allow your stomach, which has been injured, to have enough time to rest until the following day. So you are ensuring that you have rest at the same time you're fasting, so that in the morning you can break the fast. So there will be no healing without this rest or fasting, because any tissue that is injured and continues to work cannot heal. Your stomach is injured. You have eaten all through a whole year, you've never rested. You need time to rest. And most of the people who are suffering from gastritis need to know this, that unless you give a break to your stomach to rest, you are not going to heal from gastritis. Very important. It is called resting and fasting method. Secondly, water is a true remedy for your gastritis. And how do you use water? You can use anti-inflammatories such as lemon and turmeric and cayenne and ginger to sprinkle into the water you are drinking. And the rule about water drinking is you will take it 1 hour before you have any meal, and you have taken your meal, you have to wait until 3 hours before you take the water. So ensuring that you do not mix eating time with water is going to prevent and mitigate the severity of gastritis. So ensure that water is not mixed with the meals, and if you take it earlier, it is going to provide enough saliva so that by the time you're eating your meal, you have adequate saliva to digest your food with. Okay, so I've said you can put some lemon when you are drinking water because it's anti-inflammatory. And some people say that lemon can inflame the gut. No, it won't. It will not. There's no problem with taking lemon. The problem has to do with your gut, which is inflamed. And if your gut is inflamed, it hates everything that is good, including your own stomach acid. That is why you're using antacids, because your stomach is not able to accommodate. So please do not blame blessed food items that have been blessed by God for use for our health because your stomach has a problem. Once you heal, you'll be using these food articles. We also have to avoid pro-inflammatory foods. Most of the gastritis is caused by pro-inflammatory foods. It's not H. pylori, but foods that are inflammatory to the gut. So you would like to know which are these foods that are pro-inflammatory. I'll give you examples. All processed foods. So any food that has been converted or transformed in the factory is inflammatory. Because once food is taken to the factory, it has to be changed or an additive has to be placed in the food. And it is these additives that are causing inflammation of your gut. So for food to have long shelf life, they put preservatives. Some of them are antibiotics, including the unga pakiti that you take. The refined flour, it contains antibiotics. Because if they don't put antibiotics to extend its shelf life, then they are going to lose money. They are going to lose profits. So any food that you find has a long shelf life, avoid it, because the longer the shelf life of food, the shorter will be your lifespan. So inflammatory foods include anything that is factory produced, and this also entails the cooking fats and the cooking oils that you buy from the supermarket. They are all inflammatory, okay? Though they call them vegetable oils, they are not made from vegetables. In fact, that is a trademark. That is a strategy of selling so that you think they are processed from vegetable oils. But they write vegetable oils to mean that you need to use them for cooking vegetables or for frying vegetables. Those are industrial fats and oils. And the same material that makes soap also makes vegetable oils. So anytime you go to buy your oils or fats, please look for what we call the cold pressed oils. These are the oils whose method of processing does not involve heat. So the rest of the oils and fats are processed using a lot of heat. So we say they are heat distilled, but we need to go for cold pressed oils. So these are the coconut oils, the olive oils. They are expensive, but very healthy, and they are good for your gut, especially coconut oil, which is also an anti-inflammatory. So if you get rid of the pro-inflammatory foods that we have mentioned, you introduce anti-inflammatory foods. And I have forgotten another inflammatory food, sugar. Sugar is inflammatory. Then if you heat oil, especially you're frying something and you have to deep fry it, remember you have created free radicals that will inflame your gut. So avoid inflammatory foods. Introduce anti-inflammatory foods, such as any food article that contains mucus, for example, the cucumber. Cucumber is very good for the gut. Carrot juice is good for the gut. There's a fruit we call chayote or chuchu. Okay, it's good medicine for the gut. If they are grated together and you take the juice it is going to heal your gut. And when you prepare this juice, it's supposed to be taken on an empty stomach, especially early in the morning, or for that person who is going to be strict on stopping their meals at 3 p.m. in the evening, you can take that juice that you have extracted from carrots, from a cucumber, from an onion, from a chocho or chayot, okay, and then from a pawpaw. So you can mix a pawpaw, a chayot or chocho, a carrot juice, an onion, the bulb onion, okay, and what else did I say? Yeah, you can, in a pawpaw, you can mix the 4-5 items and make a very good juice which will heal your gut, okay, and then you can take it in the morning or in the evening. We also know that okra is also good for the gut, okay. We also have slippery elm. Slippery elm is good for the gut. Normally when I'm making these juices, I ensure I give you the right combination, and all my patients have healed their gastritis as a result of these combinations, because I have to ensure I monitor how they are going to use them. So in case you have any consultation or clarification to make, always call me on the number provided on your screen. But these are foolproof methods of managing gastritis. Okay. The other thing we need to do is to recolonize your gut with healthy gut microbiome, because for most people who have used antacids and antibiotics and processed foods, you have destroyed the most important system in the body that contributes, in fact, to 90% of the immune system and also 99% of your genes, and that is the gut microbiome. So we need to recolonize your gut by ensuring that we provide fiber in the food that we eat. Please do not process your food. Ensure you eat food which is whole from the garden, so that you can heal your gut. So drugs will kill the gut microbiome. If you don't provide fiber to your microbiome, you are also killing your microbiome. And if you do not have a healthy, rich microbiome, you cannot enjoy good health. For the same reason, babies who have been born through a normal vaginal birth, they are better off with a healthy, more healthy microbiome than babies born through C-section. And that is why we encourage mothers to please prepare for birth, including psychologically, doing exercises as well, eating good food, so that when the time comes to give birth, you'll be able to give birth normally. And for the same reason, we encourage women also to wait until they are 25 years of age. That is the time your body has, the hips have fully developed to create enough space to contain the baby and to allow muscles to move and your body to expand during the time of giving birth. But when we have teenage pregnancies or early pregnancies, now these ones are compromising the natural way of giving birth, and these women will end up having a C-section. And a baby born through a C-section does not benefit from the normal flora of the mother's birth canal. In other countries, they take a swab of the birth canal, normal flora, and then they wipe it on the baby's mouth. That is to ensure that the baby grows a rich microbiome from the mother's own bacteria, because these ones are closer to the baby than the microbiome they pick from the nurses and from the hospital environment. So The microbiome is very important for health. Then the other thing we need to do is we have to boost our hydrochloric acid levels. And how do we boost our acid levels? Is by ensuring that we do not have stress, by ensuring we have regular timing for food, eating the same time all the time. And also do not overfeed, because if you eat a lot of food, you're exhausting the cells that generate the hydrochloric acid. We should also not dilute our meals with water. So avoid taking water when you're eating, because by so doing, you're diluting the acid and you not have a very good, you not have a good acid concentration. Therefore, you will have heartburn if you have low acid. Then we need also to know that we need to avoid toxins. Toxins of all sorts, including the drugs we buy over the counter and any other drug that we use, it introduces toxins to the body. So the best way is to cultivate the natural ways of preventing disease so that we do not come to that point where we'll be forced to use drugs that will damage the gut microbiome. Then we should avoid toxins of all forms, including those that we apply on the skin. Because anything that you apply on the skin, whether it's a chemical, it's a skin whitener, whether it's a cosmetic product, remember, it finds its way into the bloodstream all the way into the gut, and it will cause inflammation. So let's be mindful, especially for women, those skincare products we apply on our skin and on our hair, because they end up into the digestive system. Then second last, eat a variety of food to ensure that you have the most diverse nutrients in your body so that you don't have deficiencies. There is no single food that will give you all the nutrients that you need. That is why you need to combine so many foods. But then in the combination, we have to be intelligent in combining food. Because when we combine certain foods, we delay digestion. For example, if you combine starch and proteins, like you're eating ugali with meat, you're going to slow digestion. And this is going to cause gastritis. So it is recommended that we should not combine starches with proteins in the same meal, because this is going to delay digestion. We are also not supposed to combine fruits and cooked food. Fruits are not cooked, therefore, their digestibility and assimilation is so fast. Therefore, they should be eaten before you take a meal, and they should be eaten on an empty stomach. You only have about 30 minutes to have the fruits absorbed. In fact, absorption of the fruit starts in the mouth. They'll be absorbed anywhere because they are enzyme laden, meaning because they have enzymes, they easily get into the system. So they should never be combined with cooked food. Then fruits that have a lot of water in them, for example, the watermelon, they should not be combined with anything else. They should not be combined with food, not with other fruits, because they have a lot of water and they're going to delay digestion. They should be eaten alone. This applies to any fruit that has a lot of water. It should be eaten alone. So food combination, what we call trophology, is important, because if we mix food the wrong way, this will delay digestion. It will deprive us of much needed energy, okay, in trying to reorganize the bad combination you've put in the stomach. And then it is also going to cost us damage to the cells of the stomach wall. And lastly, eat food only when you think it is the most efficient time to eat it. For example, eat food when you can easily digest it. The best way to digest food is to ensure you are active. So food should not be eaten and then you go to sleep. Food should be eaten when you are active, especially in the morning. So food is meant for those who work, and therefore If you eat, go to work. The Bible says, if you don't work, don't eat. And I would also say, if you don't, okay, if you eat, go to work, so that food should correspond to activity. And the amount of food you take should also equate to the amount of work you're going to do. So if most of your work is sedentary, please reduce your food, especially the energy-giving foods, the carbohydrates. The carbohydrates should be used by those people who are in manual labor because they need a lot of energy. So these are the true remedies for gastritis. They might appear simple, but this is actually what will reverse your gastritis. So it's not the drugs. If you're using the drugs, you always come with the symptoms. But if you follow these methods I have stipulated, you are going to permanently reverse your gastritis. Thank you so much for being with me throughout this session. If you have any question, always call me on the number provided on your screen. Goodbye. Let's meet in the next presentation. Thank you.